Good afternoon. I'm Francine Schertzer, Senior Vice President of Politics and Policy at PCN, President of the Pennsylvania Press Club, and your host for today's luncheon. Joining me at the head table is David Taylor with the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association, David Kerr with AT&T, and Todd Eaches with the Broadband Communications Association of Pennsylvania. Thank you for your support, and thank you all for being here. The Pennsylvania Press Club Luncheon Series could not be possible without the support of the generous organizations listed on our sponsor banner. Today's luncheon is being taped and will be carried throughout Pennsylvania to the television and streaming audience of PCN. Our speaker today is Governor Tom Corbett. Tom Corbett is executive in residence at Duquesne University School of Law. As the Commonwealth's 46th governor, Corbett held Pennsylvania's highest office from 2011 through January of 2015. Corbett has a long and distinguished career serving citizens as Assistant U.S. Attorney, Chair of the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency, Pennsylvania Attorney General, and Governor. Corbett has also been a key advisor to U.S. presidents and governors. Corbett served as a member of the Pennsylvania National Guard 28th Infantry Division from 1971 until 1984, rising from private to captain. Governor Tom Corbett.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Oh, come on. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
There, okay. Wow, I didn't think I'd ever be here again. I was done with y'all. But it's a pleasure to be here. And I came prepared, but I'm prepared with a speech, so I'm just going to keep this short. Many times you might remember in the past, years ago, a speaker would get up and say, I want to make sure that I keep myself on time, and he'd put his watch like that. Anybody recall who that was? Arlen Specter, that's right. So that's what I'm doing. Except I have one of these smart watches, so it's not going to help me at all. So you might say, well, what have you been doing in the last 8 years, 9 years? Real quick status update, very, very busy. We have, when I left office, we had 2 grandchildren. I now have 6 grandchildren between the ages of 13 and 8. The youngest one just is 8 right now. They're near us. They're not down in Philadelphia or out in California, where my son was. We thought we were going to be, when we were done office, going to move down to Hilton Head if they stayed there away, but they didn't. They came back, so we stayed in the house that I grew up in. I've been in since I was 7 years old. And you've all heard that story before. My goodness, politics has changed. And one of the things that I have been doing, in addition to being of counsel at a West Virginia firm that has a good presence in Pittsburgh, Spillman, Thomas & Battle, the second oldest law firm in West Virginia, I was invited to come there by a good friend of mine who was in the U.S. Attorney's office with me. He said, I got a deal for you. He said, we want you to come to our office, practice law with us. We'll give you an office. We'll give you parking in the building. We'll give you a secretary. I don't know what secretaries are today. They're all administrative assistants, right? Can't call them secretaries. And we'll give you membership to the Rivers Club. X of what you bring in, Y of what you work on. Okay, I'll do it. He was a good friend. Unfortunately, died 2 years later. But with a good group of people. Also, as you heard, I'm with Duquesne Law School. I am teaching a course here, and one of these days I might invite one of you all to come and talk to our students. I teach 3 different courses, 2 in one semester. Keep one out. Right now I'm teaching Functions and Duties of the Prosecutor, where we teach the young students how to be a prosecutor or a defense attorney. It's a second-level criminal law course. And we've been able to place many of our students in the district attorney's offices, not just in Pennsylvania, but all the way out to California, down to Florida, and in the Indian nation to do work. So I consider part of my job is to educate these kids and help them find their first job out of law school. The second one we teach is, and it was the first one I started, was law, policy, and the executive branch. How it really works. And that's where I can have one of you all to come in and talk about what you see from the media or what you did as an advisor to a governor or to an attorney general. And in fact, we've had Anne-Marie. Anne-Marie, I know you're here somewhere right in front of me. Anne-Marie Kaiser is Roby, you got that, has come in and talked, I think, at least 2 times. I'm having the executive director, you guys would love this, the executive director of the Turnpike Commission has committed to come in and talk. Because I have so many questions myself driving the Turnpike. What are you doing here? You need to fix this, okay? So Mark is coming in to talk. And it's a great opportunity for the students to learn what to do, and they have to write papers for us. And it gives them an idea of where there are jobs for lawyers when they graduate from law school. Some lawyers can go into the AG's office. Unusual, but we had one young man go directly into, if he passes the bar, into the New Jersey Attorney General's office, right out of law school. Very unusual. And the third course, and I've taught it for a couple of years, and I stopped it for this semester, is State Attorney General Law. Now, you may remember way back when I was Attorney General the very first time, the tobacco litigation was just starting. In fact, I was at the original meeting of all the AGs out in Chicago to understand what the issue was and where we might go with tobacco litigation. As a result, obviously you've seen that grow, but you have seen attorneys general across the country, Republican and Democrat, become much more active on the civil side and on the consumer protection side and on the criminal side than they were back in the mid-90s. And it has allowed us to teach this to the students. I bring in former AGs and speakers to come in and talk to them also. The more people I bring in, the less I have to talk, which is pretty good. More recently, though, I have been involved, as I teach, with an organization called Keep Our Republic. If you recall, and maybe you do, maybe you don't, from history, when Benjamin Franklin was leaving Convention Hall after the Constitutional Convention was passed, or Constitution was passed, he was asked by somebody in the street, well, what do we have, a monarchy or democracy? And he said, we have a republic, if you can keep it. Well, 200 and some years later, we're getting close to 250 years, or 250 years later, getting very close to being able to keep it. But we're in a very dire time, in my opinion. We are more divided today than I think any time that we have been since the Civil War. Anybody want to argue with me on that one? No. No. I always look to assess blame. I always look for evidence. Never stop being a prosecutor. I need to see evidence. And what do we see? We hear allegations, but how do we hear them? Okay, everybody's got a cell phone. Do me a favor, put your cell phone up. Come on, this is class participation time. Put your cell phone. Everybody in this room, I think, has a cell phone with them or they forgot it at home. That doesn't happen. Where do they get their news? They get it right from here. You can put it down now. Well, why did I do that? No offense to the press club, but your numbers are a little smaller than my time before. And why? Because people are getting their information. I'm not saying accurate information from here rather than from a newspaper. Oh my God, I miss reading a newspaper. Or from trusted sources. And they've picked a side, red side, blue side. And if they're in between, they don't tell anybody they're in between. And when they get their information, they get it from here. And the psychology that's going on the internet is overwhelming the average, I don't want to say, people, over how they get their information and what is true and what is not true. Your job in the media is to ferret out what's true. Truly, you're supposed to report objectively. There are media outlets that aren't quite as objective. They are favored by certain parties. Well, there's the Democrats and then there's Republicans. I don't see that the independents have really gotten anybody yet. Libertarian Party, they don't have anybody that I know of. But how do they get their information out? They get it out through this. As a result, people communicate directly to individuals, and the political parties communicate directly to individuals. You have a responsibility as members of the media to be responsive and to report truthfully. There might be a little bit of a tinge of color one way or the other, but to report truthfully. That limitation isn't applied to this. And as a result, people of all ages, of all persuasions, are saying, well, I heard about these ballots being dumped, or I heard that they've done this change or that change. And where did they hear it? Well, they heard it on here. Who was it applying to? Was it applying to Pennsylvania? No, they were talking about Georgia, or they were talking about Michigan, or they were talking about California. But they didn't discern that it didn't apply to Pennsylvania. I was asked by Keep Our Republic to join the organization 2 years ago. And before I go any further, I want to introduce the executive director of Keep Our Republic, Ari Middleman. Ari? I was asked to join the organization, which is made up of former elected and appointed officials, U.S. attorneys, federal judges, other attorneys, law professors. Yeah, I'm a law professor too. So business people who have an interest in seeing that this election is conducted fairly, reported fairly, and explain the process to everybody without confusing them. And I have to tell you, it can be confusing. I mean, you sit down and read, like, what is the Election Count Act? How many of you know what the Election Count Act is? Okay, look at that. Put your hands up real high. I saw 2 hands. Know the Election Count Act. Where we are today is caused partly by the Election Count Act. How many of you know the Election Count Reform Act? You're going to know it. I'm not going to teach it to you today, but I give you an opportunity to come and see me teach it this evening. We are putting on an event this, what time are you, 6? 6:30, okay. I just go where they tell me to go. At 6:30 out at Widener Law School.
We got a reception at 6 this year.
We got a reception, so there must be alcohol there, so you'll be there. That we are giving, and we're doing COE, continuing legal education, to the lawyers to explain exactly what this is. The Election Count Reform Act was passed in 2020 to try and help resolve some of the mistakes, misunderstandings that occurred in the 2020 election. I'm going to jump a little bit. How many of you remember 1960, the election of 1960? Okay, Thomas, you and I. Okay. It was a close election. And they did not get the information out there instantaneously. Why? Because they couldn't. I want to go back to those days. Because what does everybody expect now? Because of this, because of the computers, they expect information instantaneously. You may recall that when I ran for Attorney General, anybody here from the AP? Nobody from the AP. The AP reported that I lost my election. Remember that? Well, I know the people that work with me remember that. But we didn't concede. Why? Because I was pretty confident the T, hopefully you all know what the T is, the Republican T hadn't come in completely yet. Not only did I not lose it, I won by 100,000 votes. And by March, they had found out that they were missing 10,000 votes out of Wayne County, and they added 10,000 more, so I won by 110,000 votes. Because of the process of how you get that information. Well, that has continued to change over the time. These are good. I have other names for them that I won't use here in public. Because we have an anticipation that we will learn this. One of the other reasons that we have this anticipation, and I rail upon this, is projections by CBS, NBC, ABC, Fox, CNN, upon exit polls. If I could do one thing, no exit polls until 11 o'clock at night. Because people anticipate, well, how did I win Pennsylvania? No, I lost Pennsylvania because Philadelphia came in. Well, those were projections. They weren't the count. And what we're teaching with Keep Our Republic and at this COE is, the count takes a while. There is a process. And what we have in this country is a federal election that gets delegated to the 50 states and territory, that then gets delegated to the counties. We have 67 counties, and we have at least 30 different ways that they do it. Chaos? Yeah, but we're used to it until the instant information age, which, information is one thing. Accurate information is more important. So that's what I've been doing. I've been teaching the COE courses across the state. I think I don't have to take COE for at least 2 years because of what I've garnered during that period of time. But the reason we've been picking on the lawyers they are active in their communities. We want them to go to the Rotary, the Elks, the fire halls, and teach everybody else. I don't know, we haven't analyzed how well they've done that, but we need to get this word out. Hopefully, you might come and see this event later this evening, or go to our website, keepourrepublic, all one word, .org, forget the .org, and we can take you through there. Finally, seated before you, David, may I have yours? This is the most important thing that I can put out to you, that our organization can put out to you today. This explains the process that has to be done, the time constraints that have to be done. I would say, I assume you all took history at some point, but you may not remember the race of Rutherford B. Hayes versus Tilden of 1876. Where all these problems first began, and where the Electoral College really was different, and how it changed and how the votes went down. If you come to the course this evening, I'll explain it to you. And if you ask a question out here, I'm not going to answer it. Okay? But this explains it to you so that when you are looking, if you have a question, just refer to this first to see how it applies to Pennsylvania. Now, keep in mind, when you're going along here, certification is extremely important. If Pennsylvania doesn't certify on time, or any other state doesn't certify on time under this, it changes the whole mix at the Electoral College. And you can understand why some people may want to slow things down. Maybe not. Maybe we want to get it done accurately. But it's very important that we do this for the sake of this democracy. With that, I don't know how long I went because my watch. Okay, I'm done.
Like our current governor, your experience as governor was coming from the Attorney General's office. What do you think makes this experience unique from that and from that of other governors? And what advice would you offer Governor Shapiro based on your experience?
Ooh. First off, coming from the AG's office, you gained experience across the spectrum of state government. You learned to deal with the legislature. All 203 in the House and all 50 in the Senate. Not well sometimes. Sometimes you bang up against them. In my case, sometimes you investigate them. But you learn to deal with that. Originally, it was dealing with a small budget, and then I dealt with them in a large budget with governor. So I think that was a better introduction to the process, having been AG before, instead of coming in from U.S. Attorney or something like that. And again, getting around the state and getting to know the people in the state and the whole political scene, the whole scene of journalism back then when we had newspapers. I don't really advise governors other than to say, whatever you say is going to be there forever. Be careful what you say and how you say it. So far, I believe we've been doing that correctly, and I don't anticipate that he would change from that. And then every decision you make has consequences. You're not going to make a lot of permanent friends because you have to make tough decisions. I didn't make a lot of friends with my first budget. You remember that? Mm-hmm. Remember the Sherpa guide through the budget? That was one of the lines in my budget address, which if I could have my speechwriter here right now, I'd kill him. It wasn't Kevin. It wasn't Kevin. Okay, and I tease him on that. But you got to make tough decisions. You can't really try and be all things to all people at all times. If you are, you're going to be totally ineffective. So that would be my advice to anybody who wants to become governor. Anybody here want to become governor? I didn't think so.
Got one candidate.
Well, good, good.
What do you think of some Republicans' efforts to sow doubt in the results of the 2024 election?
Let's go back to the 2020 election first, because I think that's what it's based on. I've been a prosecutor for most of my adult life, in some way, shape, or form. We need evidence. My life requires evidence to be presented to me. To this day, to today, I've yet to see any evidence, credible evidence, that what was alleged in 2020 actually took place in any state, including the state of Pennsylvania. You can say anything you want to say, but you better back it up with evidence. If somebody came into the AG's office and said, "Hey, I know Charlie Giroux's dealing drugs," I would say, "I'd be surprised, but show me evidence." And if they don't show me evidence, well, get out. I think the media, across the board media, social media, mainstream media, whatever you want to describe, could have done better in 2020. Evidence, 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 because they never had shown it. Are some people trying to sow distrust? I don't know. I would rather hear them say, we want to see this be a good, clean election. We're going to follow the rules, and we want to make sure everybody follows the rules, and leave it at that.
What do you think will be the result of lawmakers' failure to pass pre-canvassing ahead of the 2024 election?
First, I'd ask the question, what is pre-canvassing? What do you mean? Anybody know? Those of you who are reporters in here and have reported on pre-canvassing, do any of you know what that is? No. That's the #1 problem. Define it. You have to define. Jan, I see you taking notes over there. You have to define what pre-canvassing is. I have found, and Ari will back me up on this, there are terms for canvassing and counting across the country that are different. So what do you mean? So let me assume, no, I shouldn't assume. Can anybody define what your question is to me as to pre-canvassing? Yep. Time out. I make all my students stand up. Come on. You know why I do that? Because I can hear you better when you stand up.
That's fair. The opening and preparation of ballots to be counted starting at 7 a.m. on election.
Okay. So opening the ballot, laying out the ballot so you can't see it, you can't do any counting, right? My question is to the General Assembly, has anybody ever explained it to them that way? Because I suspect a lot of them think pre-canvassing is starting the count at that point in time so that they would have an idea what the numbers are. In Allegheny County, and I will tell you, I went to the warehouse where all the machines are kept in Allegheny County, along with Professor Joe Mystic, who teaches with me and who's on Keep Our Republic also. You may remember, some of you might remember, he ran for Commonwealth Court a number of years ago and lost to Sandra Schultz Newman. That we went to see it, and they explained it, and they have this huge machine that will open these envelopes in a heartbeat. Now, that's a big county. I'm sure Philadelphia has the same thing. So they could, 8 o'clock comes, they feed them in there, the sheet goes on, then it goes to the counting machines. Very quick. The smaller counties are going to be a little bit different. I'm sure that they couldn't afford that equipment. Although keep in mind that the federal government has given a lot of money to the state to give to the counties, but they have to follow ECRA, Election Count Reform Act, religiously in that. So we'll see what that is. But I go back to pre-canvassing is just opening the envelopes. It's not delaying the vote total. And I assume that in most of the counties, and this is an assumption, and you know what they say about assumptions, that a lot of the counties have machines. Maybe, Forest County, you might be opening the envelopes and counting them. No effect of insult to Forest County. So it's not the deal that everybody seems, in my opinion, they want to make it out to be.
What are your thoughts on the RNC's current strategy to limit the number of ballots counted, voter opportunities to fix their mail ballots?
You're going to have to repeat that a little slower.
What are your thoughts on the RNC's current strategy to limit the number of ballots counted or the number of opportunities for those mail-in ballots to be fixed?
Let's divide that into two. To limit the number of ballots counted. I'm not quite sure I understand what that strategy is. I'm not familiar with it. Okay, anybody familiar with it? I haven't heard that. Ari, have you heard that?
There's been a lot of litigation.
Okay. In Pennsylvania, I don't think there's been litigation on that I know of. There's so much litigation out there, it's ridiculous. Okay, and the second part was the strategy?
Limiting voter opportunities to fix their mail-in ballots.
Lawyers, lawyers, lawyers. First off, the biggest complaint was the 24 wasn't written in on some of the ballots. My understanding from the Department of the Commonwealth, Secretary of the Commonwealth, is those envelopes are going out with the year 2024 in it. That should reduce that right off the top. I don't think I'm wrong in that. That's my last understanding of it. Because I said, why don't you just do 2024? I heard one time from one of the counties, well, you know, if it says 2020, we can use the count those ballots again next year. No. Let's resolve this easily. As to other defects, the signing, you know, if somebody hasn't signed it, the courts are going to decide what that is. I mean, it's up in front of the Supreme Court right now. I'm not going to weigh in on it at this time. I'm trying not to influence anybody on a legal decision publicly. But I'm 75 years old. I should be able to remember to sign. If I forgot to sign, some counties are going to call you and tell you. Allegheny County, I don't think they call me and tell me. And I'm just in between on that one.
Who do you support in the presidential contest, and are you planning to publicly endorse a candidate?
I'm not endorsing anybody. And I'm not sharing my vote with anybody. And I think it's easy because I'm involved in this organization, Keep Our Republic. I had to be nonpartisan. As I said, that group that we put together is a nonpartisan effort, civic effort. We want to see that everybody that's eligible to vote can vote, and that all the votes that are out there are elected, and that we get a final result. That's our goal. Consequently, you haven't seen me talk one way or the other about any one of the candidates. Do I have personal opinions? Yes, but I'm not sharing them today.
When you were governor, you signed legislation banning abortion coverage in the state exchange. But that's mild compared to what a governor could sign into law restricting abortion now that Roe v. Wade has been overturned. How would you advise Republicans running for governor to handle this issue now? And if you were governor now, how would you want to see Pennsylvania go regarding restricting access to abortion services?
That's a tough question, because it certainly has changed. My position when I was governor, I think it's still my position, is life of the mother, rape, incest. I believe in those. There are some that don't believe in it. We have differences of opinion. If I was governor, that's where I would be.
If Trump wins Pennsylvania narrowly, do you expect Democrats to attack the results in the same way Republicans did in 2020? Is this the new norm?
I can't speak for the Democrats, nor can I speak for the Republicans in this one. I am concerned that it might be the norm. I talk to people a lot about, was this a grand conspiracy back in 2020? Is it a grand conspiracy now going on? My gut tells me no, because if you've been a prosecutor for any length of time, it's very hard for people to keep secrets beyond 2 people, and sometimes beyond 1. And have you seen any evidence of a grand, here's what we're going to do? No. Have you seen reactions to the elections and former U.S. attorneys going off the deep end? Yeah. And, when that person went off the deep end, I went, that's not the man I know. It was an unfortunate period of time. I'd like to see us get past that. I go back to this. Because anybody can espouse anything they want to, and nobody is challenging them.
Do you think counties should be permitted to contact voters about items on their ballot that need to be addressed so that their vote can count?
Here's the problem. If some counties do and some counties don't, we potentially have a legal situation as to a disparity that could go up all the way to the Supreme Court, if that's the case. Because some counties do and some counties don't. It's got to be a fair election under the U.S. Constitution. So that's my concern. It's not going to change this year. Our friends in the legislature need to come up with a system, need to sit down, Republicans and Democrats together, and say, okay, we can tweak this a little bit. Now, it's hard for them to tweak, but they can tweak it a little bit. I mean, it's still law in Pennsylvania that you have to be 21 to vote. It's still in the books. I think you might want to clean that one up since the United States said, no, it's 18. And there are other aspects on the books in the election law that could be tweaked. Let's go in and, not just wait till a presidential election. Let's take next year when we have quote-unquote off-year elections and say, what can we do to improve the system, the election system in Pennsylvania? And for those of you that are in the print and video media, radio media, why don't you put a little pressure on? What are you going to do to fix this next year?
What are your thoughts on the job Josh Shapiro has been doing as governor?
So far, so good. I'll go back to this. You can't please everybody all the time. In watching the news, I mean, other than normal partisan issues, I don't see the Republicans objecting too much to what Josh is doing here. I haven't really followed that closely. You wouldn't believe it, but I haven't followed that closely. I will say this, that he's been accessible to me. We can talk on the phone. I can't say that for my predecessor or my successor. He's been, if I have some issues, for instance, one of the things that I'm chair of an organization in Pittsburgh called Variety Club of Pittsburgh, the children's charity. Take a look at that charity. We supply adaptive bicycles to children with physical disabilities or intellectual disabilities. Strollers, reinforced strollers for parents to take kids around that might be what's called a loper who would run. And iPads that are adaptive iPads for children who have difficulty speaking or communicating, that they can go on and communicate. And it changes not just that child's life, but it's the family's life, it's the neighborhood's life, and it's the extended family's life. It helps the children in school. This is what we call a My Voice. Schools have it, but in many schools they're not allowed to take it home. So we have provided these to the tune of, over the last 9 years, we have invested money raised, and we've received some money from the state of almost $9 million in 9 years. It's a great children's charity that, I mean, every charity's good, but that's one that has a quick impact in the neighborhood.
There are a number of journalists in attendance today. As a former elected official, what advice would you give them about their role in preserving democracy?
I think I've been covering that. Accuracy, ask the questions. I know there's some reporters in here that were dogging on me for answers. I'm looking at a couple of them, okay? One of them's not here. I got to share my nickname for him. Charlie Thompson. Okay, yeah. And I've told him this. You know what my nickname is for Charlie? Columbo. Just one more question. The only thing he was missing was a raincoat. But he would start walking out the door. And in fact, I don't know, I think this is public. Bonus gate, public, Kevin? Yeah. Charlie's the one that brought it to us. He brought me the letter that was sent out by Speaker DeWeese. He said, are bonuses legal? I said, well, in the federal government, they are. In the SES system there. But let me take a look at it. We took a look at it. No. And some of you probably weren't here, may not know. The letter said, in effect, to individual members of the staff, here is your bonus. Don't tell your member or your colleagues. Okay. Now what's going on? And what did we do? Exactly what I keep waiting to hear from political people. We went and got evidence. And we got a lot of evidence. And it led to Bonusgate, which led over to Computergate. Evidence there that people were doing things wrong, because that's what we have to do, is we have to have evidence. And we didn't announce it ahead of time. We kept it quiet. I know it drove some of you absolutely crazy. You always wanted to get the scoop. But we were doing what was exactly required under the law.
We'd like to thank Governor Corbett and wish him well. We have some mementos for him. They're gifts, compliments of PCN and the Pennsylvania Press Club. In closing, we want to thank you for being with us. Our next luncheon is Monday, October 28th. Our guest will be Dave Sunday, Republican candidate for Pennsylvania Attorney General. For scheduling information, visit our website at papressclub.org.